Hey guys, welcome back to What the Fat. This is your host, Dr. Ryan Lowery. On today's episode, we're going to touch on something that's a very important topic, something that gets brought up all the time, and something that I was part of this trend of really this fat phobia kind of before I started a ketogenic diet. So yesterday, we talked a little bit about Scooter, and Scooter's diet has changed pretty dramatically. He went from eating probably 80 to 90% carbohydrates to now he's on a ketogenic diet. And a lot of times this radical change happens in humans, and a lot of times it freaks people out. I was one of those people, right? I grew up thinking that if you don't eat fat, you can't get fat. And that's the reality for a lot of people, is that they come into this thinking that is their reality. Hey, if I don't eat fat, I won't get fat. And we've been plastered with this concept for years. And I won't go into all the details. We talk a lot about it in the Ketogenic Bible, but the real reality of how we got to that point is absolute insanity. It's one that just makes me a little upset hearing about some of the ways and methods of how we got there. But one of the things I always talk about is, cool, it's happened. How do we move forward and learn from those mistakes? And just as a brief overview, you look at what happened in the 1950s with Ancel Keys. And basically, Ancel Keys, in short, did a study where he tried to prove that cholesterol is what caused heart disease. And his first study actually showed the opposite. It actually showed that higher amounts of cholesterol related to lower incidence of heart disease, right? And so he's like, damn, that didn't work. Let me go on and start looking at fat, primarily saturated fat, and incidence of heart disease. And they really were just trying to figure out what's causing this rise in heart disease. We need to find the scapegoat. And it just so happened they wanted to pin it on fat. And so he did this elaborate study, which wasn't very elaborate at all, where he took several countries. It's also known as the 7-country studies, which is the actual 7 countries he hand selected, but there were many more that were studied. And they basically looked at the amount of fat that was consumed by these countries and incidence of heart disease. That's all they did, right? They took logs of how much fat was imported into that country and what was the incidence of heart disease. Like, as correlative as possible of any study that I've ever heard. And we made recommendations and future predictions off of it. And so he basically found and handpicked his 7 countries that went along and said, hey, these 7 countries, they tend to not only eat more fat, but they also tend to have a higher incidence of heart disease. So what does that mean? That means that fat is the culprit. Fat's the thing that's causing the heart disease, right? He made a causation claim, and then the media just took it by storm, and that's where things went haywire. But it's important to understand, and everyone that's listening to this, you guys know that correlation does not equal causation. Just because there's a correlation between people who eat a higher amount of fat and people who also tend to have a higher amount of heart disease, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Think about this. That correlation likely may still exist today. But the people who are, other than the people who are on a ketogenic diet, people that typically tend to eat more fat are likely also eating more carbohydrates, right? The standard American diet are people that are eating the Big Mac with French fries and a Diet Coke, and they're more likely to have a higher incidence of heart disease, right? Yeah, that's legitimate. That doesn't mean that the fat is what's causing the heart disease. And that's where we went wrong. And there was a whole bunch of politics and craziness involved that kind of passed legislation to now create what we still have today, which is absolute insanity with our food pyramid. And it created this food pyramid where fats were at the very top because you only were supposed to have a small amount, right? And grains and all of these carbohydrates and vegetables were at the bottom because you should have those in large amounts. And it led us to a downhill spiral. And what that did from a marketing perspective is everyone and their mother now went along and put low fat, 30% less fat, 60% less fat, 90% less fat on their products to now sell them, because this concept, we were selling people on the idea that if we cut fat, we couldn't get fat. And what happened? it bit us right in the ass. And what happened is it came full circle, and we got fatter, diseases progressed, and we go, well, what the hell happened? We cut out the fat, we were eating less fat, what happened? And now, fortunately, we're starting to see that. And if you're listening to this, you're listening to What the Fat, you really obviously understand that fat's not really the driver of this by any means. In large context, it's high amounts of processed foods, primarily coming from carbohydrates and sugar, which is driving a lot of those complications. But because of this, nonetheless, this fat phobia took place. And people, I still talk to family members or friends, and they're like, wait a minute, like, how do you eat that much fat? Isn't that going to clog your arteries? Isn't that going to clog all this stuff going on inside of your body? Isn't this bad for you? And that fat phobia still exists today. And it's crazy. And I try and get across to people this. In some regard, yes, should we still have, in essence, some sort of reservations amongst fat? Well, likely, because one of the things that people look at is, well, they associate high-fat foods with high-processed and high-carbohydrate foods, right? When a lot of times when people think high-fat foods, they're thinking of a Big Mac or a burger with the bun, or they're thinking about something wrapped in bacon that also has a ton of carbohydrates in it. So I say fat in the context of very little carbohydrate is essentially inert. And that was actually shown in a lab. Rob Wolf's lab looked at, not the Rob Wolf, not my friend Rob Wolf, that is an amazing friend and colleague out of, and has done a lot in the paleo now keto world. A different Rob Wolf basically did studies where he looked at fat in context of no carbohydrate is basically inert. Your body utilizes it for energy, right? It's when you introduce the fat in context of carbohydrates is when you run into the problems. And everyone, by now you guys know this. You're well aware of it. Like the combination of high amounts of fat and high amounts of carbohydrates, it's what's killing our society. It's the fast food industry as a whole, right? That's the problem. But what I really want to address is this concept of this fat phobia unfortunately still exists today, right? And avocado is not going to kill you, I promise you. However, taking, in some essence, taking bacon and putting it in between two slices of bread and eating that all the time can have some serious complications. That's the challenge. But at the same token, we're starting to gear towards this concept of being more fat friendly, and I love it. I love it. I love it that people are now starting to realize fat isn't the culprit. We shouldn't be so afraid of it if there isn't carbohydrate involved. And I think that's very, very important. And I love seeing it, right? When 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started ordering salads with ranch on the side, extra bacon, add steak, people would look at me and be like, you're gross. Like, that's going to kill you. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh man, if you only knew. And I'd try it and explain to them at lengths, like what's going on. Now when I order that, people are like, man, that's cool. Like, do you want like extra bacon on top of that? Or is there like any other things I can add to that? And I'm like, no, that's good. I'm good. And they see it. They understand that like having avocado in addition to a steak and bacon salad isn't necessarily a bad thing. I love this concept, and I really appreciate that more and more people are becoming more and more fat friendly. The only thing I ask is that we keep it in context, right? Blowing it out of proportion on fat isn't going to do anyone good. We do need to, in some context, avoid eating 5,000 to 10,000 calories a day. So that's why we actually did a YouTube video pointing out this fact is this whole concept of fat coffee or bulletproof coffee or MCT coffee, coconut coffee, whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of coffee. Adding in 1,000 calories inside your coffee in the morning isn't going to be beneficial. However, adding in a small amount of fat, can that be beneficial? Absolutely, certainly that can be beneficial. I actually am a proponent. I love throwing MCT powder inside my coffee whenever I drink it. I love it. It adds some creaminess. It's amazing. It keeps me fuller longer. It increases satiety. All these amazing benefits, right, from doing it. But we can't let it get carried away. And one of our jobs, one of our missions at ketogenic.com is we want to protect this conversation. It's one of the things I want to do with this podcast is by highlighting people who are living this lifestyle, by people who are leading the charge, not only in research, but in the practical application. I want to make sure we're taking care of that and protecting it. And so we've made this shift, which is amazing, from being fat phobic to being fat friendly. Absolutely amazing. But at the same time, we can't go fat overboard, right? Fat's great, fat's important, but let's not take it where we're sticking a stick of butter inside of our coffee, or eating an entire 2 avocados per day just with our salad, right? Avocado is great, but keep it in context. And that's one of the things I hope that you guys take away from this episode, is that it's amazing that we've gone from fat phobic to fat friendly. And fat's great. I'm a huge fan of it. There's different types of fats. MCTs are a great source of fat. However, let's just keep it in context. Let's make sure we're not overdoing it and going overboard on the fat, because at the end of the day, that could be the difference between someone making progress or someone stalling or someone having complications on the diet. And then what happens, right? We all know what happens. Then they go running, they go out, and not only do they stop and it affect their health, but now they go on and tell their friends, oh, I tried that keto thing and it didn't work out. And now that could effectively be someone whose life could have changed because they kept things in context, but then they're going out and telling family and friends, and that's something that needs to be taken into context. So one of the things that I want to wrap up with is this: tracking macros, right? A lot of times people get hung up on, like, I need to hit my fat intake on the day. I need to make sure I'm tracking every ounce of fat and protein and carbohydrates I'm consuming. The thing I want to say to that is this. In the beginning, is it important and beneficial, likely to track to some degree? Absolutely. But at some level, one of the most exciting benefits that I see about a ketogenic diet is how liberating this is from a psychological perspective, right? I can go weeks or months without ever tracking a single thing and be completely fine with it. And I think that is so immensely liberating for people someone who comes from tracking all of my food all the time when I was trying to be a bodybuilder, probably trying to put on size when I was playing sports throughout my entire life. But the liberating component, if we're tracking all the time and really trying to hit our fat calories, our fat intake every single meal, and counting it down to the speck or the drop of fat that we're putting on food, is that really liberating to some degree? That's one of the things we need to keep in context, is that I think it's important to some level to make sure we're on point. But let's not remember that part of the benefits of this lifestyle is a psychological freedom of being able to eat how we want to eat. And that's one of the most important pieces. So guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Today we talked a lot about the fat phobic movement to now going to fat friendly, and I love it. I think there's a lot of benefits of us moving towards this direction. I hope that it's going to change the food and nutrition industry as a whole. I hope we eventually take that pyramid and flip it upside down and get fat higher up there in higher amounts, and are able to change some of these things. Like, I look forward to the day that they go 90% more fat rather than 90% less. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to What the Fat. Leave a comment, subscribe, share with people. We'd love your guys' feedback. So appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, make positivity louder. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.